While some NBA stars are famous for their on-court skills and highlight reel performances, some are known for raging and throwing tantrums when they don't get their way. So here are the biggest crybabies in the NBA. And we're starting off with a player in the running for MVP this season, Luka Doncic. Now, no one can argue the fact that Luka Doncic has already exceeded everyone's expectations. While some people said the Dallas Mavericks were aiming too high when he first entered the NBA 3 seasons ago, he's proved all his critics wrong. Not only is he among the most well-liked, but he's also among the most promising players in the league. But even the best athletes have their flaws. And for Luka, his flaw is being unable to admit his mistakes. The Slovenian is a play-making machine, a prolific scorer, and an offensive force. But he isn't the best defender in the league. So when things don't work out in his favor, he prefers to complain to the referees repeatedly. So I can't blame them for getting tired of his antics. It's not surprising that he's ranking in the top 3 for the most technical fouls this season, since he doesn't even return to defense and stays in the referees' faces begging for a call. The forward even realized how bad his whining got and promised to stop getting in the officials' way, but fans still haven't seen a major improvement from his side. It makes you wonder how many more suspensions will it take for Luka to finally understand he isn't helping anyone with his drama. But while Luka is getting bashed online for being a crybaby, our next player was facing criticism on court. Fans have a love and hate relationship with Kyle Lowry. While they admire him for being able to make the most of his NBA career, it's difficult to appreciate him when he acts up, and it's usually for calls that are made against him or his team. The Heat player has a specific way of throwing his tantrums too. His shocked expression and outstretched arms aimed at the closest official are a constant in almost all Heat games. When Kyle was with the Toronto Raptors in 2019, he was even called out by a fan at the Indiana Pacers game. With 8:30 remaining in the second quarter, Lowry went up for a block under the hoop while defending Doug McDermott. As he began to move toward the fans behind the basket, Lowry turned around, headed for a fan, and pointed a finger at them. As he made his way back toward the baseline, the fan was seen cupping his hands over his lips as he yelled. So what exactly did the fan say that got him so riled up? Well, according to Scott Agnes of The Athletic, the fan told Lowry to stop complaining. It's a shame when someone like him gets called a sore loser, but when players like the iconic LeBron James are being called the same thing, it makes you wonder if it's the player that's really at fault, because James is recognized as one of the best basketball players in the world and is one of the most well-known NBA players in the entire world. But he's also got a reputation for being one of the biggest whiners. It looks like James is almost always involved in drama, from having courtside spectators ejected from games to spitting on Isaiah Stewart. His drama also happens off the court, primarily on Twitter and other social media. But it gets even worse when he gets criticized by fellow basketball players like Shaquille O'Neal for complaining about the NBA's short offseason during the 2020-21 season. James often cherry picks after failed shots and mistakes when it appears that the opposition team might speed the ball down the court for a quick shot. This ends up creating a mess on the court as his opponents run their offense, forcing him to rejoin the action up to 10 seconds later. James' decision to stay on one side of the court often causes his team to have a transition defense ranking. Late reaction times because players are too busy arguing is something both the James have in common, because James Harden is a player who struggles with the same thing. But while Wall and Westbrook sprint around the court, Harden is more methodical and rarely trips over when he is bumped. It's the calls themselves that are slowing him down. Harden is one of the NBA's slowest defensive wings. His arguing for long periods ends up putting his team in a difficult situation, but nothing harmed the team more than his long-standing ongoing rivalry with referee Scott Foster, who he's gone on record to say is a rude and arrogant official. Harden even mentioned that the NBA should look into his refereeing style in 2019, just a year after Chris Paul called him out for the same thing. CP3 can get under the skin of referees very easily, and while he can voice his opinions, most of the time he ends up making an enemy out of NBA officials like Scott Foster. But even referee Lauren Holtkamp got enough of Paul's whining during a game against the Cleveland Cavaliers and began issuing technical fouls. So in his post-game interview, Paul couldn't help but bash Holtkamp, saying she didn't belong after the game. His reckless comments ended up costing him around $25,000. Even though the rulebook said it was a completely legal call, Paul thought it was unfair. The NBA instituted a new regulation in 2010 to reduce the complaining and overall obscenity that occasionally occurs after a foul call. So if players can't control their grumbling and act out, they may receive a technical foul. Players like Paul often find that out the hard way. And it looks like the next player on our list hasn't realized it as well. Chris Paul and Blake Griffin were teammates for some time, so it's not surprising that he's picked up some of CP3's personality traits, bad and good. Blake can play point forward if necessary, which is good. He passes the ball beautifully and is a fantastic passer. But the bad thing is that his attitude often results in him being harshly fouled. Of course, he's spoken out about the referee's behavior toward him. Still, players that spend a lot of the game in the paint experience a lot of bouncing, so it is difficult to tell whether Blake has it worse than other players or whether he's whining about something that everyone has to deal with, especially when you consider the fact that Griffin is known to love a fairly physical style of play. Even then, the American player has already mastered the Tim Duncan style, and he may just be giving tips to Draymond Green. Because while there's no denying that Green is an exceptionally talented player, when he makes a fancy pass and gets intercepted, he sometimes takes his time returning down the court, all while crying to refs about foul play. But if the Warriors forward thinks a call is unfair, he sticks around the referees knowing he disagrees with them. Given his incredible passing ability and insane defensive skills, it's no surprise that the Suns value him. But when he feels he has been wronged while heading for the hoop, he often enters plays late. Green's tardiness has almost cost the Golden State games. So I can only imagine what the result would be if the team's defense wasn't as strong as it was without him. But the positive thing to come out of his argumentative behavior is that he isn't afraid to speak out for his teammates too. Well, there you have it. These were the biggest crybabies in the NBA.